We thought recently about the God to whom we pray, what he's like, that God has a name, and that name is synonymous with compassion, mercy, and goodness and love. We also reminded ourselves that God is a relational being in himself and in how he wants to be in relationship with us, with human beings. Prayer is the key way that we connect with God. The problem is, with the world in which we live, that so many people are short of time. How can we fit time in to spend with God, to connect with him, when things are just so busy? Well, we'll be exploring a number of ways over the next few weeks. But it's true, isn't it, that we're terribly short of space in our culture. Space to let quiet things breathe. The pace of daily life is accelerating and the demands are so often unremitting. It's as if we got on the 8:15 from Great Snoring, the slow train that stops at each little village, chugging its way gently into the countryside. But then we find it gets faster and faster, accelerating instead of steadily moving along. It's rushing through every station until the carriage sway alarmingly. We're hanging on to our seats and to our luggage, and still the speed increases. We can't help but think that sooner or later it's all going to come off the tracks. Or how about this for another image? You know, when your suitcase is full, not just full, but absolutely full to bursting, you jam another shirt in and kneel on the case to try and get it shut. Then you notice there's a jumper you'd forgotten, so you stand on the case to force it closed. Right, no more now, you say. That's it. Completely full. Then you realise that you've left out your toiletries bag and you just know you can't fit anything else in. You need a different strategy, don't you? You need to start again. Approach things in a different way. In a culture where speed and the ability to pack more in is becoming self-defeating, many people are just crying out for space to slow down. I'm sure some of us are in that position. Another story, this one from John Pritchard. It was the 1800s, and a group of porters were rushing through the jungle at a ridiculous pace set by the Europeans who'd hired them. Eventually they got to a clearing and sat down. The Europeans tried to get them moving again, but the head porter said, "No, we're not moving. We've come so far and so fast that now we have to wait for our souls to catch up with us." Could that be the case with our culture today, perhaps? Have we left our souls behind? Perhaps then it's time to build some slowing down time into our lives. Then we can listen to the quiet whispers from another country that most of the time we're just not aware of. Maybe we need to create times for stopping, taking everything out of the case and trying a different way of packing all together. Slowing down is an absolutely vital part of the spiritual journey. It's only then that we can stop panicking about when we're going to come off the rails and start noticing the fascinating countryside that we're actually travelling through instead. Imagine for a moment a glass of muddy water. Shake it up to disturb it, and the water becomes murky and unpleasant. Put the glass down to rest, though, and you see the cloudiness in the water gradually clear, and the dirt settles to the bottom. Eventually you have clear water and a dark sediment underneath it. In some similar way, when we slow down, the water of our life clears and we're able to see and understand what's going on inside of us. The tragedy is that so many of us just don't know how to do this. So we miss so much of what's really going on, or what God might want to say to us in the everyday of life. We live in a society that uses words in huge quantities. We send them everywhere. Letter, fax, email, phone, text, tweet, blog, and so on. But words are still the best tools, aren't they? The best that we've got to get us started with prayer. even if in time we can learn to pray in a way which is beyond words. But more of that in a few weeks. The truth is, words are pretty much part of every relationship that we have, and ours with God is no different. Let me just suggest 3 things about words which we might worry about, but that really don't matter in our prayer life. The first is quantity. Look, we really don't have to say a lot in our prayers. Rather, we just say what we feel strongly about. In any case, saying a lot may mean that we lose the point. Prayer is about life, about all of it. But we don't need to talk about all of it at once. The second thing that doesn't matter is the quality of our words. We don't need to be speaking well in good English with nicely rounded phrases. The key word here is authenticity. Remember, prayer is about relationship with God, a God who loves and accepts us. It's about a heart as well as a head connection. The final thing that doesn't matter is knowledge. We really don't need to have a theology degree to speak to God. Prayer is where heaven touches earth, and prayer is for everyone. Prayer is for amateurs, and all of us are amateurs. Now, 2 things that really do matter. The first is being natural. The first talk in this series, we looked at Moses talking with God as if with a friend, and that's the model which is probably most helpful. We can talk with God about anything and everything in the way we talk to anyone in the daily round of our lives. When we talk to God, we don't have to put on our best clothes. The second thing is about being honest. The Psalms, the poetry book of the Old Testament, is full of the passionate cries of the hearts of honest people venting their feelings before God. How long, O Lord? Why, God? Will you forget me forever? If we're honest, most of us ask questions like that sometimes. And honesty is what God deals with best. So at heart, prayer is about exploring a relationship with God, not about perfecting a technique. It may help then to use an image of prayer to be like another deep relationship, that between a husband and a wife. For a marriage to be healthy, the relationship needs to exist at 4 levels. The first is simply getting on with it. Much of marriage is lived naturally and unself-consciously. We don't go on about it, we just live with that relationship as a backdrop to all of life. Likewise, a relationship with God will involve simply getting on with daily life, but doing that against the background of God's presence, knowing that He is there and knowing that He really does care. Chatting is also an essential part of marriage, the daily sharing of 100 small conversations about nothing much at all. Don't forget the dentist appointment. Can you pick up a pint of milk when you're out? Similarly, some of our day-to-day communication with God will be chatting, and some people call these arrow prayers. God, help me in this next meeting. God, I pray for the person I just saw walking past me in the street who looks so miserable. So on. The next thing is talking. Any marriage needs proper conversation that gets down to the things that matter. Thoughts, feelings, deeper things do need to come out and be shared. It's the same with God. We need some time to have the space and the focus of simply being with Him to deepen our relationship. And that's where the going gets tough, especially in the modern world in which we live. I really believe most of us need help and support in building a rhythm into our lives which can enable this to happen. And we'll be looking at that in much more depth in a couple of weeks. Sometimes in married life, we communicate in ways that are beyond words, maybe just a look, even silence has its place. Because of how well you know one another, perhaps there are times when words do fall away. And we can all learn to spend time in silence, in meditation, and just simple enjoyment of God. This is something we explore monthly at Be Still, and which really can make a difference to our lives if we stick with it over a period of time. And finally, for today, when we're thinking about making space for God and how we might pray, even in the week ahead, at a basic level, it's a question of finding a special time for prayer. Some people find a time in the morning, others at lunch break, others in the evening. Because we've already thought about chatting and just getting on with it as forms of prayer, these things we can do throughout the day as we're going about our daily lives. And there's other ways of praying internally that we can do and that we can learn as we go about our daily lives. But it's the talking prayer. It's the deeper stuff that we might want to be engaging with God. And it's that intimate time with God that for many of us is much harder to find. And the truth is, it's those times of prayer that are most likely to connect with our deepest needs and desires. And yet many of us struggle to find a way of fitting that in at all. The biggest thing, I think, is regularity rather than the length of time we spend. To find a time of day when we can spend some of that more intimate time with God can make a huge difference to us. It's really not about hard and fast rules. It's about working a way of prayer into our lives as they are right now, with all the pressures that we're under as individuals. Never forget what God is like. God is gentle and He's patient. Stick with this series of talks, catch up on the website, and do try some of the ideas and resources that we'll be offering and which we already do offer. All of them are designed to support us. They're designed to support you as you and we all seek to live a balanced, healthy, and fruitful life as followers of Jesus. So at the heart of prayer, I hope we see again is relationship. God is relational. He's a God who wants to know and to be known. Prayer is connecting with Him. It's being honest about the things we care about and the things that we struggle with. It's a central part of our Christian life, and I truly believe it can become a joy rather than a burden. But we do need help to get there. So keep on doing what you're doing. If it works for you, that's wonderful. But also be open to learning some new things, some new rhythms, and be open too to a deeper relationship with God, a deeper relationship than you can possibly have imagined.